Good morning, everyone. It's truly an honor and joy to speak in front of all of you today. Praveen, much love, man. Thank you so much for those kind words. And to MD24, I'm sorry to say, in fact, you do have one more lecture left. I'll try my best to keep this high yield, but Dr. Schiffman is a hard act to follow. I'd like to start with some acknowledgements. First, that we sit today on the ancestral homelands of the Narragansett Indian tribe, whose ancestors stewarded these lands with great care and who continue as a sovereign nation today. We also represent a university that has benefited directly and indirectly from the transatlantic slave trade, whose ancestors have not been compensated, and we should be mindful of the past and commit ourselves to anti-racism as we discuss the future. I'd also like to acknowledge ongoing conflict domestically and abroad, and urge us all to appreciate the incredible beauty of this moment, that we're able to gather here today as a university, as a community, in a moment of reflection and celebration when many around the world are unable to do so. I'd also like to thank all the faculty and staff that made today possible: Dean Jane, Dean Hampton, Dean Warrior, Dean Vries, Dean Rugas, to all our mentors who supported us, too many to name here, to all the administrators that keep this place running, and of course to Alex Meringue and Kelly Whalen, who served as academic advisors, but so much more. Therapists, crisis managers, and cheerleaders. We couldn't have done this all without you. And finally, I'd like to welcome all of you here today, close friends and family members who came from far to share this moment with us, those who are watching virtually. We didn't get here alone. It truly takes a village, and parts of our villagers are here in the church today and with us in spirit. And for that, we could not be more grateful. So, when do we actually become doctors? That's the question that's been on my mind, and perhaps a lot of our minds for a while now. It's the annoying, are we there yet? On the road trip that started when we first came up with the idea to go to medical school. Some of you are probably thinking now, well, Sud, obviously the answer is today. It's literally our graduation. But I ask the question because I truly believe it's more complicated than that. By analogy, every year on your birthday, you would agree that you don't suddenly become 1 year older. Aging is a process. Becoming something, anything, is a process. And so it leads us to wonder, for those of us who chose a life in medicine, what has this process been, and what are we trying to become? Undeniably, it was a long road getting here. Without ignoring the labor that got us into medical school, I'll start with the number: 1,386 days since our orientation at AMS. That's 46 months, 198 weeks, over 33,000 hours. And that's just the minimum. For those of us who took a year off, it's more like 42,000 hours. And for those who did an MD PhD, I stopped counting. Along the way, we experienced joy and hardship. We watched lifelong friendships develop. We saw relationships start, and more: proposals, marriages, and new babies. We grew as individuals in a community, in every sense of the word. But, and there's always a but, it wasn't easy. Perhaps every generation says this, but our time in medical school was harder than usual, because for most of us, our initial experiences in medical school overlapped with the first few waves of the COVID-19 pandemic. Thinking back to those days, we would have never imagined a gathering of this size, unmasked, without distancing. Some in MD24 had just missed their college graduations and are probably sitting in person for their first commencement like this since high school. We were forced to quarantine, limit contact with our new classmates, and test multiple times per week in person. I remember vividly what that was like, but of course I can't speak to the experiences of all of my classmates. And so, last week I sent out a survey to gather personal reflections from the pandemic, and I'll share a few responses here. Thank you to those who actually filled out my poll. Classmates wrote the following: "It was painful watching everyone struggle. I wanted to find mentors to start charting my path, but everyone was so busy, stressed, worried. I wondered if I would ever learn what normal is like. It was so hard to build community in our class. For a while, there were classmates who I recognized only by the tops of their faces because we always had masks on. And perhaps one that summed it up best, one classmate sent via text, "Sorry, Sud, I'm traveling right now, so I can't fill out your survey. But in terms of starting med school during a global pandemic, it sucked. And I tend to agree. It did. However, looking back, we can't help but recognize how these challenges shaped who we are today. It showed us a concept beyond resilience, because something resilient absorbs stress and remains unchanged. But how do you describe something that goes through stress, breaks down, and wakes up the next morning ready for more? As we watched those in healthcare kicking their feet to keep their heads above water, we realized that in this trying profession, you can't always stay afloat. Some storms are just too great. But as the pandemic dragged on, we witnessed something else too: the profound art of sinking without drowning. The ability to open your eyes while submerged and realize when we really need to, it's possible to breathe underwater. Because, in fact, the hardships did not give way to helplessness. As medical students, we volunteered at contact tracing sites, delivered food so high-risk members of the community could avoid grocery stores. We babysitted and dog-sitted and cat-sitted so senior physicians could work extra shifts. In fact, it's the credo of medical students around the world to ask the following question: is there anything else I can help with? We've all asked that at some point. We found ourselves asking and answering this question for ourselves. This adaptivity to take initiative and find purpose amid chaos will serve us throughout our careers. Now, they say pressure makes diamonds, but in this case, I'd argue that the strain made us softer. It bolstered our compassion and expanded our perspectives by forcing us to confront shamefully gaping medical disparities. Our long history of racism in the societal and governmental structures of our country meant that communities of color shouldered a greater burden of disease and had less access to treatment. This truth was a foundational pillar of how our generation of physicians learned about the systems of care in the US, a truth we must fight to change in our careers of service. And ultimately, on a personal level, the pandemic taught us the power and necessity of connection. As the COVID generation, we had to fight for this connection, and we got pretty good at it. Going forward, we'll recognize more than previous generations the indispensable role of camaraderie and friendship in our work lives and our personal lives. Okay, so that's a bit about where we came from, the process. Now, what are we becoming? Since this is actually your final set of lectures, I thought I'd take a moment to take attendance. MD24, I'm going to need your help with this one. I'll go through the class, specialty by specialty, and when I call out the name of your future specialty, feel free to cheer, raise your hand, wave your caps, whatever feels right. I'll start slow and then move through more quickly. Are you guys ready? Okay. 132 graduates sit here today. Before you, I present 28 members of MD24 pursuing residency in internal medicine, we have 13 future emergency medicine doctors. We have 12 future pediatricians, 9 future psychiatrists, 9 pursuing OBGYN, 8 future family med doctors, 4 future radiologists, 4 future neurologists, 3 future anesthesiologists, 2 dermatologists, and 1 each of pathology, triple board, and PM&R. Oh, and I almost forgot. We have 23 future surgeons in our class. Among them, 5 future orthopedic surgeons, 4 future plastic surgeons, 4 future ophthalmologists, 3 pursuing general surgery, 3 neurosurgeons, 3 urologists, and finally 2 spectacular, amazing, stellar otolaryngologists. Sarah, Brian, did I say that right? Anyway, thank you for playing along. Those were just our specialties, though. Beyond our future training, what does it mean to become a doctor? It's a big question, and one that I don't have an answer for right now. If you want real wisdom, I suggest you find Dr. Schiffman after the ceremony lets out. But since I have the mic, I'll offer at least part of the answer, and I think it's littered among our favorite medical quotes. You might have heard, to cure sometimes, to relieve often, to comfort always. Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung once said, "Know all the theories, master all the techniques, but as you touch a human soul, be just another human soul." I scrolled through Med Twitter recently and found another one I liked. A patient won't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Running through all of these aphorisms, as well as Dean Jane's speech and Dr. Schiffman's speech, is a common thread that you've heard already. It's humanity. A key role of a doctor is to connect with patients, and if that's the case, then we become doctors through living and embracing human experience. Patients need doctors that look like them, that have felt the ways they felt, can share in their highs and lows, and understand the esoteric as well as the mundane. We become doctors when we eat our favorite dessert and understand that diet change is hard. We become doctors when we stay up way too late catching up with friends and realize that sleep hygiene is a very weird concept. We become doctors when we watch new movies and have opinions on the latest reality TV shows, even when we scroll Instagram and TikTok, understanding how addictive they are, but also what they'll mean to future generations. Surely mastering medical knowledge took a large amount of sacrifice, and it's not to say that USMLE exams, residency match, and the degree today aren't important, but rather that they lose their meaning if we don't take the necessary next step of applying our knowledge and skills with the necessary humility, compassion, and care that comes from being grounded humans. So indeed, we'll remain on this journey of becoming doctors long after today, through residency, fellowship, and beyond. And on that note of going forward, commitment to diversity in the profession is a must, and we have a long way to go to make good on that promise. In the meantime, I'll say that our patients need the sum total of our past experiences, every version of ourselves. The perfectionist pre-med college student who never misses a detail, the musician with creativity that brightens a dull room, and the former athlete that has teamwork baked into their DNA. We need them all in different measures at the right time, because don't forget, you were becoming doctors back then too. Now I'll admit, this isn't a novel concept. Many people would agree that medicine and humanity are linked at their cores. And so if you'll let me, I'll distill my case for the humanity in medicine and say that it is, in fact, stronger than it's ever been. Point one, the first shock to our system, COVID, that we experience in our medical education won't be the last. The next big shock to our health system will be as new, unexpected, and seemingly insurmountable as a pandemic that shaped our early education. And what got us through that pandemic was human connection, faith in our public health officials, trust in scientists and researchers, and ultimately the bond between healthcare providers and the public. As we look to learn from the last 4 years, it couldn't be more obvious the role that humanity will play in our ability to weather the next storm. Second, we're living in an exciting time where technology and scientific advances are rapidly changing medicine. New gene therapies are on the market, and as of today, some patients living with sickle cell disease can actually be cured. Applications of artificial intelligence are poised to reach the clinic. Think ChatGPT, but designed for medical care. New technology tends to exacerbate inequities and threatens to alter the therapeutic dynamic. But we, as the next generation of physicians, will have some control over how these advances change care. I'll give you a story. When the stethoscope was first invented, certain physicians rejected it. At the time, it was common practice for a physician to place their ear directly against a person's bare chest to listen for heart sounds. And some said, nothing should get between me and my patient. Now, if your physician did that to you today, you'd probably ask for a second opinion, or if you're a med student with a standardized patient, Dean Rugas would fail you on your OSCE. Of course, now the stethoscope is a symbol of our profession, and my point is that it's up to us to decide how technology is incorporated into the practice of medicine and determine how we can ensure that care is human-centered and patient-centered. We and other healthcare professionals truly will act as the stewards of humanity in healthcare going forward. And then finally, point three, we live in a world that is increasingly divided politically and ideologically. The news is monopolized by conflict, and doctors, as healers, have a part to play. We have a pedestal on which to call for basic human dignity and a calling to provide the rights of health and safety to all those in need. You can hear them outside today. I hope we all stay engaged, keep our values close to our hearts, and advocate for those at home and globally. After all, being a good doctor is about being intensely humanistic, always, but even more so in trying times when humanity itself is under attack. So to conclude, I'd say we become doctors throughout this journey in a continuous and concerted fashion. Each time we put on scrubs or get ready for clinic, we revalidate our commitment to our communities, to being healers, and to leaning into humanity with all of our beings. Every day, with consistent effort and thought and measure, we will become more of what the letters behind our names represent. So I'll end with a single request and a short piece of practical advice for this moment. First, the request. After today, MD24, please don't be strangers. Continue to cultivate these bonds that will sustain us through our careers and our lives. I will say we have the tools. Turn on your GroupMe notifications, or better yet, get people's numbers. We owe it to ourselves and our patients to stay in touch. And now, the advice. Be present in this moment. We may become doctors every day, but we only graduate medical school once. So if you'll bear with me one last time, focus your attention on the now. It's May 26th, 2024. We're gathered here today with loved ones to celebrate this miraculous moment in our lives, to recognize how far we'll come and how far we will go. When you get your hood, pause for a second to let it sink in. Feel its weight on your shoulders. When you hug loved ones out on the lawn, squeeze a little tighter and hold a second longer. Try to let the stresses of planning this weekend and the changes of the coming months fade away for a while and just appreciate where we are right now. Don't miss this moment, class of 2024, because despite everything I've just said, and the fact that the road behind us is long and the road ahead longer and winding still, as of today, in the eyes of society, our loved ones, and the Warren Alpert Medical School of Brown University, members of the class of 2024, I guess we're all doctors now.